In case you haven't watched part 1 of this video, the extreme points of a given region are its most northern, southern, eastern and western points. There are also other extreme points such as its highest peak and lowest point. A lot of countries have disputed and/or overseas territories, which helps to make this video certainly more interesting. Countries like Denmark are rather small, yet when combined with their external territories, it changes everything. If you'd like to watch part 1 after, I've left a link to it in the description below. Okay, so let's continue the theme with Denmark. So as just mentioned, mainland Denmark is rather small. It ranks as the 130th largest country in the world, at just 43,000 kilometers squared. However, when you include all territories of the Kingdom of Denmark, it's a completely different story. It would rank 12th at 2.2 million kilometers squared. So to make this one a bit more interesting, we will include all of its territories. So including all of its territories, Café Klubben Island, which apparently translates to Coffee Club, is Denmark's most northern point. It is also the most northern undisputed point on Earth. The island was discovered in 1900 and is uninhabited, which is no surprise because who on earth would live there? Some 3,400 kilometers south of Coffee Club Island, you'll find Denmark's most southern point, a town named Geyser. The town is not just Denmark's most southern point, but also the most southern point of Scandinavia and the Nordic region. The population of the town is around 700. Denmark's most eastern point is this tiny little group of rocks just off the island of Christiansø, east of the island of Bornholm in the Baltic Sea. This point is actually found east off the coast of Sweden and north of Poland, which kind of doesn't make sense in today's times. However, as southern Sweden was once part of Denmark, this would have made sense then, as it was a Viking stronghold. Some 4,000 kilometers west back to Greenland, you will find Denmark's most western point, Cape Alexander, which is found not far from Canada, just a stone's throw across Baffin Bay. Now, mainland Denmark is very flat. Its tallest point is just 170 meters tall. However, Greenland's tallest point is nearly 3,700 meters, some 22 times higher. This point is found in Greenland's northeast. Next up is Australia. Australia is notoriously gigantic and rather barren. The distance between some of its main cities is insane. One of my most favourite geography facts is that Perth is known as the most isolated big city in the world, as the closest big city to it is Adelaide, which is over 2,100 kilometres away. For this one, we'll just use Australia's mainland mass, so that does unfortunately exclude Tasmania. So Cape York is continental Australia's most northern point. It is found at the very top of the pointy outbit here, not far from Papua New Guinea. The Cape is found 10 degrees south. Some 4,000 kilometers south by car, you will find mainland Australia's most southern point, which is actually named South Point, and is found southwest of Melbourne. This point is found 39 degrees south, so some 29 degrees further south than its most northern point. Cape Byron in New South Wales is Australia's most eastern point. It is found about 3 kilometres east of Australia's world famous Byron Bay. And now that I think about it, I think I've actually been here before, as I did visit Byron Bay a few years ago when I travelled Australia, and there is a lighthouse there which looks oddly familiar. But anyway, over 5,000 kilometres west by car, you will find mainland Australia's most western point. It is known as Steep Point, some 670 kilometres north of Perth. It is known as the point where you'll see the final sunset in the country. The highest point on continental Australia is Mount Kosciuszko. It stands 2,228 meters tall, which makes it incredibly small in terms of the world's tallest mountains. It is found in New South Wales, just south of the capital Canberra. It's kind of crazy that Australia has so much land, yet its tallest point is around 4 times smaller than Mount Everest. Next up should be another interesting one, a country with a very peculiar shape. For this one, we'll just use its mainland. Chile's shape makes it instantly recognizable. It is one of the most unique country shapes in the world. due to its long but narrow shape. So the country's most northern point is here, on the border with Peru and Bolivia. This point is more northern than all of Uruguay, Paraguay and Argentina. As the crow flies some 4,000 kilometers south of Chile's most northern point, you will find its most southern point, Cape Froward, which is found in the region of Patagonia. Chile's most eastern point is found here, on the border with Argentina in its Antofagasta region, which is found north of the Atacama Desert. This point is found at a similar latitude to Rio in Brazil. Chile's most western point, just like its most southern, is found in the deep south of South America in the Patagonian region. It is found in an area full of fjords and glaciers running along the South Pacific. So as we just mentioned earlier, Chile is of course a very narrow but long country. Its widest point is just 380 kilometers and the narrowest just 90. Ojos del Salado is Chile's highest point. It stands 6,879 meters tall. This actually makes it the second tallest mountain on the continent. It is found on the border between Chile and Argentina, on Chile's central eastern border. Next up, we'll do the entire continent of North America, the third largest continent. So North America's most northern point is actually somewhere we've already mentioned in today's video. It is Kaffeklubben Island in Greenland. Although politically part of the Kingdom of Denmark, Greenland is geologically part of the North American plate. If we were to exclude Greenland, then its most northern point would be Cape Columbia, deep in Canada's north. North America's most southern point is said to be Cocos Island in Costa Rica. It is found in the Pacific Ocean off the western coast of the country. North America's most eastern point is found again in Greenland. This point is so eastern that it is more east than the entirety of Iceland, Portugal and most of the UK. It kind of feels like cheating. So if we were to exclude Greenland, then its most eastern point would be Cape Spear on the French overseas territory of Saint-Pierre and Miquelon, east of Canada. North America's most westernmost point depends on the definition of most western. If following the international date line, it would be Cape Wrangel on Attu Island in Alaska, which is northeast of Japan and east of eastern Russia. At nearly 6,200 meters, Mount Denali is North America's tallest mountain. It is found in Alaska just north of Anchorage. Norway is a country whose extreme points might surprise you. For this one, we'll just use its mainland. So Norway's most northern point is found here, a cape which borders the Barents Sea. This point is also the northernmost point of mainland Europe, making it more northern than its Nordic neighbours Sweden and Finland. Norway's most southern point on its mainland is found here at the very bottom of the country, around 5 hours drive from Oslo. It is on a similar latitude to that of northern Scotland. Norway's most eastern point is super interesting. It is found further east than all of Sweden's territory, and in fact the majority of Europe, sharing a similar longitude to that of Kiev in Ukraine and St. Petersburg in Russia. Norway's most western point is found here, just north of the city of Bergen, along the North Sea. And finally, Norway's highest point is Galdhøpiggen, which is quite hard to pronounce, but it stands nearly 2,500 meters tall, making it not just Norway's highest point, but the highest in Scandinavia. Kiribati in the Central Pacific is the only country on Earth to be located in all 4 hemispheres. Although it's only a small country, its territory stretches across quite a large distance. So Kiribati's most northern point is an island called Washington Island. It's a tiny island with a population of less than 2,000. It has a lake, a church, and a review on Google giving it 5 out of 5 as there is no people there and the reviewer hates people. Located in the southern hemisphere, Flint Island is Kiribati's most southern point. It is found closer to French Polynesia than it is to its most northern point. Caroline Island is Kiribati's most eastern point. It is also found in the southern hemisphere, and just like its most southern point, it is uninhabited. Banaba or Ocean Island is the country's most western point. It is found in fact very west from the rest of the country, located just east of Nauru, the world's 3rd smallest country. The population of the island is around 300. Kiribati's highest peak is also found on Ocean Island. Its highest point is just 87 meters above sea level. That is the same height as New York City's world-famous Flatiron Building. Indonesia is a country that is made up of around 17,000 islands, stretching across Southeast Asia and into Oceania. Now, some of its islands are tiny and insignificant, whilst others are huge and densely populated, such as the island of Java, which is the most populated island on Earth. So Rondo Island is the most northern point of Indonesia. It is found north of the island of Sumatra in the Andaman Sea. The island is uninhabited and home to a military outpost with a heliport, barracks and lighthouse. Indonesia's most southern point is Pamenar Island, which is found in the Lesser Sunda Islands, southeast of Bali and north of Broome, across the Timor Sea. The most eastern point in Indonesia is found on New Guinea, on the border with Papua New Guinea. The island of New Guinea is split pretty much in half between the two countries, with Indonesia owning the west part and Papua New Guinea owning the east. Benggala Island is Indonesia's most western point. It is actually found in the same place as its most northern point, just off the coast of Sumatra. It is found just a tad south, and of course more western, than Rondo Island. Puncak Jaya is the highest point in Indonesia. It stands 4,884 meters tall. Just like Indonesia's most eastern point, it is found on the island of New Guinea. Now, depending on your definition, where Europe starts and ends is up for debate, as the continent kind of blends in with Asia, so it's hard to see the exact extreme points. So including the European continent and all of its islands, the most northern point is said to be Cape Fligely, which featured in our part 1 video, as it's also the most northern point of Russia. However, if we exclude Russia, then the most northern point will be here in Svalbard, which is owned by Norway. The most southern point of Europe is found here on Gavdos Island in Greece, to which there is a chair to represent it. Again, depending on your definition, there could be other contenders for the most southern point, such as the Canary Islands, which are European politically. Europe's most eastern point is said to be found on Cape Flissingsky, which is found southeast of Svalbard, Europe's most northern point. It's kind of nuts that this extreme point could be classed as Europe, as it's such a remote place located far northeast of anything remotely Europe. Over 6,000 kilometers west from Cape Flissingsky, you will find Europe's most western point. It is an islet found on the western side of the Azores, which are an autonomous archipelago belonging to Portugal in the mid-Atlantic. The distance from Europe's most eastern to western point is about the same as Europe's most western point to Houston, Texas. The highest point in Europe is Mount Elbrus. Well, kind of. Mount Elbrus stands 5,600 meters tall, but as it sits in a region that is considered the continental border, some might not agree. In that case, the award would go to Mont Blanc in the Alps. For me, Mexico is one of those countries that appears to be much smaller than it actually is. I know Mexico is a big country, but when I think of it on a world map, I don't think of it being that big. However, it is the 13th largest country on Earth. So Mexico's most northern point is along the border with the US, in a town called Los Algodones. This town is further north than American cities such as Houston, New Orleans or Miami. Mexico's most southern point is somewhere around here in this river along the border with Guatemala. This point is further south than the entire country of Belize and many of the larger Caribbean islands like Cuba, Jamaica and the Bahamas. Mexico's most eastern point is here, an island just off the coast of Cancun. So Mexico's most western point is Roca Elefante, which is an island in the Pacific off of Mexico's northwestern coast. And finally, Mexico's highest point is Pico de Orizaba, which stands 5,675 meters tall, making it both the highest peak in Mexico and the tallest volcano in North America. Brazil is absolutely massive. It is so big that it makes up about around a half of the entire South American continent. It stretches for a distance of around 8.5 million kilometers squared. Using its mainland, its most northern point can be found on a mountain here, on the border with Guyana. Some 4,400 kilometers south, you will find the country's most southern point, which is a short stream on the border with Uruguay. For the mainland of Brazil's most eastern point, we need to travel back up north, past Rio and Sao Paulo, and just above the city of Recife. At this point, we're about 3,000 kilometers away from the coast of Africa across the Atlantic. Almost exactly 4,000 kilometers west of this point, you will find Brazil's most western point, which is a national park on the border with Peru. This means that Brazil is ever so slightly taller than it is wider in terms of its extreme points. Another one that is quite hard to believe. As impressive as Brazil's geography is, its tallest mountain does let it down slightly. It stands just shy of 3,000 meters and is found on the border with Venezuela. And to finish off this video, I've got a bit of an interesting one. When doing my research, I came across this little tourist attraction in Thailand, which is known as the apparent narrowest part of the country. So Thailand has this weird border situation going on with Cambodia, where there is this rather small and extremely narrow slice of land across the Gulf of Thailand. Kind of nuts. There's actually a school there, which means the kids of the school could probably look out their window and see another country. Now, do you know of any other weird border situations like this? Feel free to share them in the comments below if you do.